Hello and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to talk about the loss of a parent. Now for me, I don't really know how to word this properly, but I've lost both my parents, except my dad's dead and my mom's still alive. So my dad passed when I was 11, and me and my mom have never ever had a mother-daughter relationship at all. I've always kind of been the parent. I raised myself. Like, I've talked about that in some of the videos, like me potty training myself and just certain things like that a parent should help their child with, but I never got that, or a mother's love or connection. Because, like, you can't even go to my mom and try to talk to her about your time of the month at all. She freezes up and she's like, nope, 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 nope. And it's like, that should be something a mom should talk to her daughter about, not hide from. But there's that. But with my dad, that's also a very finicky thing, because I was not mentally prepared for his death. I like to think I was, because when I was about 5 years old, I think 5 or 6, I remember sitting on the couch watching my dad have his 6th or 7th cigarette for that night and just thinking, why? You're smoking yourself to a grave. You're basically nailing your coffin shut with every single cigarette. And the amount of medication he was on at this point was just, you just couldn't believe it, if that makes sense. And I just sort of sat on that couch and I was like, yeah, my dad's not going to make it to my 18th birthday. Nothing. Like, I knew deep down, and I rarely ever told people, but there'd be people who would talk like that. Like, oh, your dad will make it. He'll walk you down the aisle. Right, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, no, I know my dad's never going to make it to that point because, one, he's old. My dad was 57, almost 58 when I was born. So he pretty much was over half a century. He's almost 60, right? Like, he's old. I know my dad's old. And I knew he was sick, right? He had rheumatic fever as a kid, was in a terrible truck accident in the 70s, which killed 2 people. He lived with PTSD from it. That I know. Like, he could not sleep at night at all. There'd be nights that I would go in because I had a bad dream or a thunderstorm woke me up. Because here's a funny little mini story. So after I was born, my mom made this, once the nurses left, she took me out of the little thingy, whatever, and sat her beside me. And I slept beside her the whole night until she knew the nurses were coming back in, and then she placed me back there. Do you think I would sleep in a crib afterwards? No. But if you would have left me in there and let me cry it out, I probably would have. But that just shows the type of person my mom is, right? Like, she refused to let me cry. So I slept in the middle of my parents' bed till I was almost 6. So I knew my dad had PTSD from sleeping in between my parents and just going into my parents' room at night. And there'd be some nights where I'd be petrified because I had a really bad dream. And a lot of my bad dreams stemmed from my sexual abuse. I didn't realize that till much later on. But I would go in to go see my dad to wake him up, to be like, I had a bad dream, only to realize that he too was having a night terror. And that was also a lot, just to see your dad just shaking in his sleep and just experiencing it all again. He fell asleep at the wheel of the truck and it veered off the road into this, there was a tow truck attending another truck on the side of the road. And my dad veered off and yeah, it was a very bad accident. And it's lucky he survived. It's sad that 2 other people died. But his company was working him overtime. And I think he's really one of the reasons why there's logs now. Like, everything's so freaking strict is because, like, they forced him to work overtime. They literally told him, we'll fire you if you take a break, try and take a nap. And my dad had to make a choice. Get fired? And it's the 70s, right? It's not the 2000s. where you can't be a whiny little bitch and be like, I'm going to go to the employment people. I shouldn't say that because we're very lucky to live in a time where we can work in workplaces safely. But that was the time frame, to give you a gist. Like my dad, he's literally said to me the amount of jobs he was in where he had to put his safety on the line or risk being fired. It's just amazing that we have got to this point, okay? Just amazing. But I knew. So when he did die, it was just, finally, he's free of pain. And when it comes to my mom, it's very much like, I call her mom out of respect, but I don't see her as my mom. I've had to reach that point of realizing that I'll never ever have a mother-daughter relationship. She's incapable. Does that make sense? Because of her fetal alcohol syndrome and her bipolar. More so the fetal alcohol syndrome. It holds her back from being a proper, not a proper mom, but a mom. Does that make sense? So, and I know that's not an excuse in any way, but I always kept that in mind as a little girl. That a lot of the things that are happening are because my mom is mentally ill. Yes, it's causing me a lot of pain, a lot of emotional neglect on my part. I was used to begging for hugs from my parents, to go out and do things as a family unit. No kid should have to ever do that, but I did, and it's very hard. Or even just asking your mom to cook you a nice hot meal because you've had sandwiches almost every single freaking night this week. Like, she just could not properly take care of me. And it's something that I've had to realize. I've had to stop forcing a relationship, a mother relationship with her. Because I know she'll never be that mother, that support that I need. And that's why I have to keep myself in check and not put these people into motherly type roles. It's very easy for me to do that, if that makes sense. To find females. And at the same time, it's hard for me to trust females because of being sexually abused by a woman. Like, that's always my thing. It's like I'm always looking for other women, but at the same time, I'm afraid of them. My Aunt Sue, bless these two people's hearts. Like, after my dad died, my mom went off her pills. Hell broke loose. Whee! So I was placed with my aunt and uncle, two people who I never ever met in my life. I think the one memory I have is when Grandma Broadhagen was at Hillside and my dad and Uncle Brad were fighting. And Aunt Della said to my mom, get in the car, to try and like break up the fight. But that's kind of the only memory I had of my aunt and uncle. But they took me in. I never got to the point of opening up to my aunt, and I always regret that. But I did see her as a mother type figure, and she didn't fill that void, because that's the one toxic, unhealthy trait that you should never, ever, ever do, is to try and fill that void. Because you'll be searching your whole life for that mother figure that will never, ever fit your expectations, right? Because trust us. Trust me there. As someone that has a very toxic relationship with her mother, my perfect mother would be someone that can cook a nice hot meal and actually cook it. Who cleans the house, who does basic household chores, who actually cares for me, wants to help me pursue my interests and my likes, and not say to me, well, you're going to be stuck in poverty your whole life. Because she says that to me a lot, and it hurts a lot. But just getting to that point of realizing what the perfect mother looks like for you, so that you know when to tone it down some. You're never ever going to be able to fill that void. But look for those strong female role models that you can go to and talk to about things. You can open up. You can be, I don't know, just somebody. Because it's, for me personally, it was very hard growing up in a situation like that, where you already lost both your parents. Even though they're still physically there, mentally they're not there. Like my dad, like I said, my dad just sat in a chair and smoked himself to death. Well, my mom was there, but she was never ever a mom. So it's hard. And I hate it when people say I should treat my mom with more respect. I should talk to her like she's my mother. That is something that always bothers me when people say that. Because it's like you've never been in my shoes or my position. And you also forget that my mom has fetal alcohol syndrome. So there are times where I'm going to look at her and be like, Carol, you are being a little child right now. I need you to smarten up. I need you to smarten up. There's times that I've had to do that and people look at me weird because they're like, that's your mother. You shouldn't be talking to her like that. But because of the fetal alcohol syndrome, there's times that you have to be that bad parent, which I hate saying because it's like my whole childhood that was warped, right? Instead of them being the parents, I was the parents. I was the one making sure that I was okay, that I was fed, that I was clothed. There were still other people around me taking care of me. My next door neighbor, for example, Nellie, and her husband, Crazy, that was his nickname, but they took care of me. They helped me a lot. I betrayed their trust by stealing the Barbie toys, but apparently that's normal in kids that have been through a lot because you like to push the boundaries. And when nobody's ever told you no your whole life, and when you've been the rule, when you've had nobody to tell you what you can and cannot do, it really messes with you. You don't know how to set any proper boundaries. You don't know how to set the pace in relationships. Nothing. It really messes with you. So for the love of God, even if it's just saying to your kids, I want you in bed by 9 o'clock, devices off by this time, you can still read and do all this stuff, right? Can you, or even have like a little flow chart, right? Timmy does this day, while this sibling does that, and that sibling does that, and dad does this, and mom does that. But just having ground rules and structures, not having that really failed me. And it still is failing me. I'm trying not to let it. I'm making sure that I'm working on boundaries, working on healthy relationships, because that's also the biggest thing from not having parents there emotionally, is just even finding healthy relationships and knowing what is a good relationship, right? And I think the sexual abuse kind of comes into it. I'm a straight female. I know that, always have been. But just that messes with you a lot. I was sexually abused by a female, like I said. So it's, that really fucked with me with relationships with other women. I have a hard time trusting other women because of that. So it's like there's that. And because of my mom being bipolar, I should talk about this portion, is watching people's moods. As a kid, it felt like walking on eggshells. And my dad had a temper. So that's the other thing too. So when you combine like both of that, oh my God. Like it was so hard, watching my mom and making sure like I was always called the good child. And the reasoning is because of my mom. I knew that if I got a little too unruly, that meant that mom would go off her pills maybe, she would have a breakdown, and she'd be gone again. And so I knew better than that. And I know now that that's not right. I should have been allowed to be a child. A loud, boisterous, I am here, right? Like, it's something very much that I struggle with a lot. Just being here. And that's why I do these videos a lot, is it's my voice. Like, the loss of a parent really does mess you up, though. And it's something that isn't talked about a lot. And even just not having like I said, not having a parent there emotionally. Or, let's say your mom or dad walks out and you never see them again. That really does mess with you. And it isn't, to me, isn't talked about enough. Like, you can't have a healthy relationship. You can have a healthy, you can have a healthy relationship. You just have to work on the boundaries and all the other stuff. But if you have lost a parent, I feel for you. I understand. And if you've gone through anything like I have, just knowing that your dad was going to die at some point, and trust me, I know everybody dies, but with him it's just you knew. You knew to high heaven he was going to die. And just with my mom, it's hard when you've been emotionally neglected. You get attached to people. You have really bad anxiety. Because you're constantly wondering if you're doing the right thing, if people want you, if this person wants you, if that person wants you, if you said too much, if you haven't said enough. It's just, it's a lot to deal with. But just know that you're not alone. And if you still have a good enough relationship with your one parent, give them a hug. Just give them a hug. Because they too have probably gone through a lot themselves. Thank you.